The galaxy laughed at human warfare, until Earth's veterans entered the battle part. The massive alien ship appeared over Earth without warning. It hung in the sky like a silver mountain, its polished hull reflecting the clouds below. Governments around the world scrambled their jets, but before they could take off, every screen on the planet lit up with the same message. "Greetings, humans. We come in peace." That was 3 months ago. Now Laura Mitchell stood in the Grand Hall of the Galactic Confederacy's flagship, trying not to look impressed. As Earth's ambassador, she needed to project strength. The aliens already thought of humans as weak. "Ambassador Mitchell, please join us," called Admiral Zexthal, his blue scales shimmering under the bright lights. The Admiral was a Xylorian, the dominant species in the Confederacy. He stood nearly 7 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes that never seemed to blink. Laura walked forward, her dress uniform feeling too tight around the neck. Next to her, Navy Captain John Carter kept his face carefully neutral. They were here to negotiate Earth's entry into the galactic community, but so far the terms had been insulting. "We have reviewed your military capabilities," Admiral Zexthal said, his translator making his voice sound metallic. "Quite amusing." A ripple of chittering sounds, alien laughter spread through the room. At least 30 different species were present, all looking at the humans with various expressions of amusement or pity. "Our weapons are adequate for our needs," Captain Carter said stiffly. Admiral Zexthal picked up a human pistol from a display table. "Projectile weapons?" The galaxy moved beyond such toys 10,000 years ago. He dropped it with a clatter. "And your ships, they cannot even break light speed without our help." Laura tried diplomacy. "We understand we have much to learn. That's why joining the Confederacy would benefit both parties." "Benefit?" A thin alien with gray skin and large eyes stepped forward. "What benefit could you offer? Your planet will be accepted, but only as a Tier 3 member world. You may trade basic resources and receive limited technology. Nothing more." Captain Carter's jaw tightened. Laura could tell he was angry. The Confederacy was offering Earth the lowest membership level possible, barely better than being classified as a primitive world. "We have other skills to offer," Laura said carefully. "Humans are adaptable, creative." Yes, Admiral Zexthal waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "All species say this, but let me show you something." A hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed a Confederacy ship firing energy beams at an asteroid, vaporizing it instantly. "Standard Confederacy shield technology makes your bullets and missiles useless," the Admiral said. "Our smallest scout ships could defeat your entire planetary fleet." More alien laughter filled the room. Laura felt her cheeks getting hot. NT. Older human man stepped forward from behind them. He hadn't spoken during the negotiations before. His name was Frank Miller, and Laura only knew he was some kind of military advisor assigned to their team. "If I may ask," Frank said politely, "how many wars has the Confederacy fought in the last 100 years?" The question seemed to surprise Admiral Zexthal. 3 major conflicts and several minor police actions. Frank nodded. "And before your species developed energy shields, how did you fight?" "That was millennia ago," the Admiral replied impatiently. "Humans have fought over 150 major wars just in the last century," Frank said quietly. "We've had to become good at it." The room grew quiet. Laura studied Frank more carefully. His simple gray suit hid his background, but she noticed old scars on his hands and the way he scanned every room he entered. This man had seen combat. "An impressive number," the Admiral finally said. "But quantity does not equal quality. Your conflicts were limited to 1 planet. Simple affairs compared to galactic warfare." Frank simply nodded and stepped back, but Laura noticed several aliens looking at the humans with renewed interest. The negotiations concluded with Earth accepting the Tier 3 membership. It was better than nothing. As they prepared to return to their temporary quarters, an aide rushed into the room. "Admiral, urgent news from the rim sectors." The Admiral read something on a transparent tablet, his face darkening. He barked orders in his native language before the translator could catch up. What's happening? Laura asked one of the friendlier aliens, a furred creature named Veltox. Harvester ships have been spotted past the outer beacons, Veltox whispered. Bad news. Harvesters? They come from beyond the galaxy's edge. They don't conquer, they consume. Entire planets stripped of resources. We fought them back 30 years ago, but if they've returned... Later that night, Laura found Frank Miller alone on an observation deck looking at the stars. You're not just a military advisor, are you? She asked. Frank smiled slightly. I was a soldier for 40 years. Fought in every major conflict since. The Water Wars. Why didn't you speak up more during the negotiations? Because they wouldn't have listened. Frank pointed to a distant star. Pride is a weakness. The Confederacy believes technology makes them superior. They've forgotten what it means to be outmatched and still find a way to win. You think we could beat them? Their ships can vaporize mountains. Frank shook his head. Not with our current technology. But war isn't just about who has the biggest gun. It's about how you think, how you adapt, how far you're willing to go to survive. An alarm suddenly blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Over the next few days, Laura and Captain Carter observed the growing panic among the Confederacy officials. The Harvesters had destroyed 2 outer colonies already. The Confederacy fleet was mobilizing, but reports suggested their standard tactics weren't working. During an emergency council meeting, Admiral Zexthal reluctantly addressed the human delegation. These Harvester vessels, Captain Carter asked, studying the holographic images, they adapt to your weapons during battle? Unfortunately, yes, the Admiral admitted. Their ships are partially organic. They learn from each encounter. Frank Miller, who had been quiet until now, stepped forward, again. On Earth we have a saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Perhaps this is an opportunity to show you what humans can offer the Confederacy. What could you possibly offer against this threat? The Admiral scoffed. Frank smiled. A smile. That didn't reach his eyes. Let us bring in some of our veterans. People who have spent their lives thinking about how to defeat superior forces. You might be surprised. The Admiral looked ready to dismiss the idea, but another alien, a high-ranking general, spoke up. The Harvester fleet will reach Proxima Centauri in 2 weeks. If they take that gateway, Earth will be directly exposed. She looked at Frank with all 4 of her eyes. What exactly do you propose? 50 advisors. Battle-hardened soldiers who understand adaptive warfare. Let them observe and suggest. What do you have to lose? The council erupted in argument, but Laura could see the seed had been planted. For the first time, the Confederacy was considering that maybe, just maybe, the primitive humans might know something they didn't. Frank caught her eye across the room and nodded slightly. The galaxy had laughed at human warfare. They wouldn't be laughing much longer. The galaxy laughed at human warfare until Earth's veterans entered the battle part. 6 months had passed since Earth joined the Confederacy. The Harvester threat had grown from a distant worry to a full-scale invasion. Their massive ships, part machine and part living organism, tore through space like hungry sharks. Captain Samantha Reeves stood on the bridge of the ESD Valor, Earth's newest starship. Though impressive by human standards, it was small compared to Confederate vessels. The ship had been built using some alien technology, but still relied heavily on human design principles. Another defeat at Sigma 9, her communications officer reported. Confederate forces retreating to fallback position. Samantha frowned. The Confederacy's military followed the same patterns in every battle. They formed neat lines, advanced with overwhelming force, and expected the enemy to be intimidated. But the Harvesters weren't like other enemies. They didn't care about displays of power or perfect formations. Show me the battle reports, she said. The screen filled with data. Samantha had fought in the resource wars back on Earth. She'd led troops against enemies with better equipment and larger numbers. Something about the Harvester tactics seemed familiar to her. They're operating like a hive, she muttered. Predictable at the strategic level, but chaotic up close. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Paul Jackson, nodded. Like army ants, the individual doesn't matter, only the collective goal. The ship's communication system buzzed. It was a direct call from Earth Security Directorate headquarters. "Captain Reeves," said the stern face of General Patricia Howard. "Proxima Centauri has fallen. The gateway is lost." Samantha felt a chill. Proxima Centauri was the nearest star system to Earth, with the main transportation hub that connected human space to the rest of the Confederacy. "The harvesters will reach our solar system in less than a month," General Howard continued. "The Confederacy has finally agreed to accept our help, not that they had much choice." "What kind of help are we offering?" Samantha asked. "We're sending 50 veterans as advisors. General Alan Foster will lead them." Samantha knew Foster by reputation. He had fought in more conflicts than most soldiers had years of service. "These advisors will be spread throughout the Confederate fleet," General Howard explained. "You'll be getting one too. The Valor is being assigned to a defense cluster near Helix 4. The general's expression softened slightly. "This is our chance, Captain. Show them what humans can do." 3 days later, Samantha welcomed her new advisor aboard. Colonel Frank Miller looked older in person than in his file photo. His face was weathered, with deep lines around his eyes. But those eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "Captain Reeves," he said, shaking her hand. "Pleasure to be aboard." "You were with the diplomatic team that first met the Confederacy," Samantha noted. Frank smiled slightly. "I was. Watched them laugh at our primitive weapons. Not laughing so much now." Valor joined a Confederate defense group led by the cruiser Celestial Guardian. The alien captain Drazkel made it clear he didn't want human advice. "You will observe only," he told Frank and Samantha during the first briefing. "The Valor will take position at the rear of our formation." Frank didn't argue. He simply watched and listened as the Confederate officers discussed their battle plans. Later, in the privacy of the Valor's briefing room, Frank shook his head. "They still don't get it. The harvesters adapt to energy weapons within minutes of exposure, yet the Confederacy keeps using the same tactics." "Why don't they change?" Lieutenant Jackson asked. "Because they've never had to," Frank replied. "Their technology has always been superior. They don't understand fighting at a disadvantage." Samantha studied the star charts. "Helix 4 has a dense asteroid ring. We could use that." Frank's eyes lit up. "Now you're thinking like a human soldier." When the first Harvester scout ship entered the Helix system, Samantha made a decision. The Valor broke formation without permission, heading toward the asteroid ring. "Captain Reeves," Drazkel's angry face appeared on the screen. "Return to your assigned position immediately." "With respect, Captain," Samantha replied. "I'm positioning my ship where it can be most effective." "This is insubordination." Frank stepped into view. "Captain Drazkel, the harvesters will detect your energy signatures from half a system away. Your current formation is asking to be attacked." "Our shields will protect us," Drazkel insisted. "Like they protected Proxima Centauri?" Frank asked quietly. The alien captain's face darkened, but he didn't reply. The Valor powered down most of its systems and drifted into the asteroid field. Samantha ordered mining charges placed on several large rocks. "What exactly are we doing?" asked her tactical officer. Frank explained. "Classic guerrilla tactic. When you're outgunned, you don't stand and fight. You hide, you wait, and you strike where they don't expect it." Hours passed. 2 more Harvester ships joined the first. They moved directly toward the Celestial Guardian and its support ships, ignoring the powered-down Valor. "They're scanning the Confederate ships," Lieutenant Jackson reported, "adapting to their shield frequencies already." The first shots were fired. Energy beams from the harvesters sliced through Confederate defenses like they weren't there. "Now," Samantha ordered. The Valor's crew detonated the mining charges. The explosion sent asteroids tumbling toward the harvester ships from behind. At the same moment, the Valor powered up and fired its main guns. Not energy weapons, but modified railguns firing solid slugs at near-light speed. The harvesters, focused on the Confederate ships and their energy weapons, were caught completely by surprise. The asteroids damaged one ship's propulsion system. The Valor's projectiles tore through another's hull before its adaptive defenses could respond. "All Confederate ships, change course heading 2 on 27 Mark 4, Samantha broadcast. Move into the asteroid field. Use irregular patterns. To her surprise, Drazkel complied. The Confederate ships scattered, taking cover among the asteroids just as the Valor had done. Fire only projectile weapons, Frank advised. If you must use energy weapons, constantly vary the frequencies. What followed was nothing like the orderly battles the Confederacy was used to. It was chaotic, dirty fighting. Ships darted between asteroids, firing from hiding, then moving quickly. The harvesters, used to enemies that stood their ground, struggled to adapt. 2 hours later, the battle was over. The harvester ships retreated, one of them severely damaged. The Valor docked with the Celestial Guardian for a debriefing. Captain, Drazkel's attitude had changed. Your tactics, he said to Samantha and Frank, they were unexpected, unorthodox. Human tactics, Frank corrected. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years, sometimes with sticks and stones, sometimes with nuclear weapons. We've learned to adapt to anything. The Confederacy has much to learn from Earth, it seems, Drazkel admitted reluctantly. As they returned to the Valor, Samantha received a message from Earth. The small victory at Helix the 4 was being noticed. More Confederate captains were requesting human advisors. And on Earth, scientists had made a breakthrough studying captured harvester technology. The enemy's adaptive capability had a weakness. It was designed primarily for energy weapons, not physical projectiles. We're modifying all our ships with railguns, General Howard told her. Old technology, but sometimes old is exactly what you need. Frank Miller smiled when he heard the news. The galaxy laughed at human warfare, he said. They won't be laughing much longer. The galaxy laughed at human warfare until Earth's veterans entered the battle part. 3 news of the victory at Helix 4 spread quickly through the Confederacy. Most alien commanders dismissed it as luck, but a few younger officers began asking questions about human tactics. On the Confederate command ship Eternal Vigilance, General Alan Foster sat through another frustrating meeting. The Confederate High Command still refused to fully embrace human strategies. One small victory does not prove your methods are superior, said Supreme Commander Thrix, a tall insectoid alien with compound eyes that reflected the room's lights in 1,000 tiny mirrors. The Confederacy has defended the galaxy for 10,000 years. And in all that time, Alan replied calmly, you've never faced an enemy like the Harvesters. Alan was a stocky man with gray hair cut short in military style. At 62, he had more combat experience than anyone else in the room, human or alien. His weathered face showed the scars of battles fought across Earth's war zones. Your energy weapons become less effective with each encounter, he continued. The Harvesters adapt too quickly. Admiral Zexthal, who had once mocked human warfare, now seemed less certain. What do you propose, General? Stop fighting like the Confederacy and start fighting like humans. The alien commanders exchanged glances. Explain, Supreme Commander Thrix said. Alan stood and walked to the holographic display showing the latest Harvester advances. Their forces had taken 12 more systems since Proxima Centauri fell. The Harvesters expect you to follow your standard tactics, direct confrontation, rigid formations, overwhelming firepower. So stop doing what they expect. He waved his hand and the display changed to show the Bellatrix star system. Your next major defensive line. Correct, Admiral Zexthal said. We've positioned 200 ships to defend Bellatrix Prime in a perfect defensive sphere around the planet, Alan noted. Beautiful formation, completely predictable. Before the Admiral could object, Alan continued. Earth is ready to deploy 15 ships equipped with modified railguns and projectile weapons. Let us join the defense of Bellatrix Prime. The alien. Commanders debated among themselves in their own languages. Finally, Supreme Commander Thrix spoke. Your ships may join the defense, but they will remain at the rear of our formation. Alan nodded, hiding his frustration. The Confederate military was too rigid to change quickly. They would need to see more proof. Meanwhile, on Earth, Dr. Eric Washington led a team studying harvester technology. They had been working day and night since samples were recovered from the battle at Helix 4. Eric was a brilliant scientist who had designed weapons during Earth's resource wars. Now, surrounded by alien technology far beyond human science, he looked for weaknesses that others might miss. The Harvesters use an organic technological hybrid system, he explained to Admiral Pete Johnson of the Earth Security Directorate. Their adaptive capabilities are impressive, but focused almost entirely on energy-based attacks. Because that's all the Confederacy has used against them for centuries, the Admiral said. Exactly. Eric pointed to a microscope display showing Harvester material samples. Their defenses analyze energy signatures and quickly adapt. But physical projectiles, especially with irregular compositions, confuse their systems. The Admiral looked thoughtful. How quickly can we retrofit our entire fleet? We have 5 ships ready now, another 10 within 2 weeks. Make it happen, the Admiral ordered, and send word to General Foster. The Earth ships assigned to Bellatrix Prime need this upgrade immediately. 2 weeks later, the ESD Intrepid approached Bellatrix Prime, leading a small fleet of Earth vessels. Commander William Dawson watched the massive Confederate fleet on his view screen. Their ships formed a perfect sphere around the planet, just as General Foster had described. William was a veteran of the Arctic campaign, where outnumbered human forces had used the harsh environment to defeat a technologically superior enemy. The memory gave him an idea. Sensors, what's the composition of that nebula near Bellatrix Prime? He asked. Heavy hydrogen and metal particles, sir. Significant electromagnetic interference. William nodded. Perfect. When the Harvester fleet arrived, it was 3 times larger than expected. Their massive bioships moved toward Bellatrix Prime with frightening speed and purpose. The Confederate fleet opened fire with their energy weapons. For a few minutes, the barrage seemed effective. Then, as had happened in every previous battle, the Harvester ships adapted. Their organic hulls developed new patterns that absorbed or reflected the energy attacks. The Confederate formation began to break as ships were destroyed one by one. Aboard the Eternal Vigilance, General Foster watched the battle with growing concern. The Confederate commanders were following their standard tactics despite all his warnings. Sir, a human communications officer called out, Commander Dawson of the Intrepid is requesting permission to break formation. Foster glanced at Supreme Commander Thrix, who was busy giving orders to hold the defensive line. Tell Dawson he has my authorization, Foster said quietly. Execute Plan Omega. On the Intrepid, William Dawson received the message and smiled, grimly. All Earth vessels, this is Commander Dawson. Break formation and follow the Intrepid, we're going hunting. The small Earth fleet peeled away from the main Confederate formation. Instead of retreating, they headed toward the nearby nebula. What are they doing? Admiral Zexthal demanded, noticing the movement on his display. Saving your planet if we're lucky, General Foster replied. The Earth ships disappeared into the nebula. The Harvesters, focused on the main Confederate fleet, didn't pursue them. Inside the nebula, the Earth ships powered down all non-essential systems. The electromagnetic interference masked their energy signatures. All ships, prepare new projectile weapons, William ordered. Variable composition rounds with depleted uranium cores, set for maximum penetration. The Earth fleet moved silently through the nebula, emerging behind the Harvester forces. The enemy ships, their adaptive defenses focused forward on the Confederate. Energy weapons were completely exposed from behind. All ships fire at will, William commanded. Railguns and mass accelerators launched solid projectiles at near-light speed. The rounds tore through the Harvester bioships, causing massive damage before their adaptive systems could respond. The sudden attack from behind threw the Harvester fleet into confusion. As they tried to turn and face this new threat, the Confederate ships pressed their attack from the front. General Foster seized the opportunity. He grabbed the communication system on the command deck. All Confederate ships, this is General Alan Foster. Break your formation. Attack in random patterns. Vary your weapon frequencies constantly. Supreme Commander Thrix stared at the human in shock, but didn't stop him. The battle was already lost using Confederate tactics. What did they have to lose? Surprisingly, Many Confederate captains obeyed. Their ships broke the perfect formation and began attacking from multiple angles, changing their weapon settings frequently. Between the projectile weapons of the Earth fleet and the newly chaotic Confederate attack, the harvesters couldn't adapt quickly enough. For the first time since the invasion began, the Confederacy had found an effective strategy. After 3 hours of intense fighting, the remaining harvester ships retreated. Bellatrix Prime was saved. On the command deck of the Eternal Vigilance, Supreme Commander Thrix approached General Foster. "Your tactics," the alien commander said, his voice translator struggling to convey his mix of emotions. "They were disorderly, unpredictable, wasteful, but effective," Foster pointed out. "Yes," Thrix admitted. "Effective." The victory at Bellatrix Prime marked a turning point. Human veterans were no longer kept at the rear. They were moved to the front lines, given real authority to implement their strategies. And on Earth, Dr. Washington's team worked day and night to produce more of the specialized ammunition that had proven so effective against the harvesters. The galaxy had stopped laughing at human warfare. Now they were starting to learn from it. The galaxy laughed at human warfare until Earth's veterans entered the battle part. For 1 month after the victory at Bellatrix Prime, the war had changed. Human veterans now served on every major Confederate vessel. Their advice was no longer ignored but eagerly sought. Lieutenant Kate Miller sat in the officers' mess of the Confederate cruiser Stellar Might. The ship's alien crew had been cold toward her when she first came aboard. Now they saved her a seat at their table. "Tell us again about the tunnel warfare and the resource wars," asked Drex, a young Xylorian officer. His scales were still bright blue, a sign of youth. Kate smiled. She had fought in the tunnels under the Sahara when she was barely 20. Now those painful memories were helping to save the galaxy. "When you fight in darkness," she explained, "you learn to use all your senses. You listen for the smallest sounds. You feel the air move when an enemy gets close. Most importantly, you learn to be patient." The alien officers listened carefully. Confederate training had never emphasized such skills. They fought from a distance with powerful energy weapons and perfect formations. The idea of close combat, of using all your senses, was new to them. The ship's captain approached their table. Captain Velkar was older than most Confederate officers, with battle scars that had dulled his scales. "Lieutenant Miller, may I speak with you privately?" he asked. In the captain's quarters, Velkar showed her a star map. A large harvester fleet was gathering near the Orion Nebula. "Intelligence suggests they are planning to attack our manufacturing world of Kaldor Prime," the captain said. "If they capture its shipyards, they could double their fleet size within weeks." Kate studied the map. "They expect you to defend the planet directly." "That is our standard protocol, yes." "Then don't." The captain's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "Humans have a saying, don't fight the battle your enemy wants you to fight." Kate pointed to a nearby asteroid field. "Position your forces here instead. Let them think Kaldor Prime is poorly defended." "Allow them to reach the planet?" Velkar sounded shocked. "Not exactly." Kate smiled. "We set a trap." 3 days later, Admiral Susan Hayes arrived at Kaldor, Prime aboard the ESD Defender. At 58, she was one of Earth's most decorated naval officers. The Confederate High Command had finally requested a human admiral to coordinate their forces. Susan was a tall woman, with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her uniform was simpler than the ornate outfits worn by Confederate officers, but no one questioned her authority. The local Confederate commander, Admiral Zex Thal, greeted her with more respect than when they had first met months earlier. "Admiral Hayes," he said, bowing slightly. "We have positioned our fleet as Lieutenant Miller suggested." Susan nodded. "Show me." The star map revealed Confederate ships hiding in the asteroid field. Only a small defensive force remained around Kaldor Prime itself, bait for the trap. "And the surface defenses?" Susan asked. "Modified as requested. The planetary shield generators appear normal, but have been reconfigured according to Dr. Washington's specifications." Susan smiled. Eric Washington's team had made another breakthrough. They found a way to tune shield frequencies to match the resonance patterns of harvester bioships. If timed correctly, they could disrupt the enemy's organic systems. The harvester. Fleet will arrive within 12 hours, Zexthal said. Are you certain this strategy will work? Susan looked him in the eye. In war, nothing is certain. But on Earth, we learned that sometimes you must take calculated risks. The harvester fleet arrived exactly as predicted. 80 massive bioships approached Caldor Prime, their organic hulls pulsing with energy. They easily pushed aside the small, Confederate defensive force. From her command chair on the Defender, Susan watched calmly. Let them get closer to the planet, she ordered. We need them within the gravity well. Confederate officers shifted nervously. This went against all their training, allowing the enemy to reach the planet they were supposed to protect. The harvester ships entered orbit around Caldor Prime. Their weapons began firing at the planetary shields. They're following the expected pattern, Susan's tactical officer reported, adapting to the shield frequencies. Commence Operation Trojan, Susan ordered. On the planet below, engineers activated the modified shield generators. Instead of repelling, the harvester attacks, the shields began to emit frequencies that matched the harvester bioship's own energy patterns. The effect was immediate. The organic components of the harvester ships began to vibrate wrongly. Their hulls distorted as their biological systems went into shock. Now, Susan commanded. The Confederate fleet emerged from the asteroid field, attacking from behind. But, unlike previous battles, they didn't use their energy weapons. Each ship had been equipped with human-designed railguns and projectile weapons. The harvester ships, their adaptive systems disrupted by the planetary shields, couldn't respond effectively. Physical projectiles tore through their weakened hulls. Susan opened a channel to General Alan Foster, who commanded a group of smaller, faster ships. General, execute Phase 2. Foster's voice came back confident. With pleasure, Admiral. His ships darted between the larger harvester vessels, firing specialized warheads at point-blank range. These weren't simple projectiles, but contained electromagnetic pulse generators designed by Dr. Washington's team. When they detonated, the pulses interfered with the connection between the organic and technological components of the harvester ships. Some lost power completely. Others began firing randomly, hitting their own vessels. In the Confederate command center on Caldor Prime, alien officers watched in amazement. It's chaos, one said. There's no formation, no pattern to the attack. Admiral Zexthal nodded. That is the essence of human warfare, controlled chaos. The battle lasted only 3 hours. By the end, 65 harvester ships had been destroyed. The remainder retreated, badly damaged. It was the largest defeat the harvesters had ever suffered. In the aftermath, Susan met with the Confederate High Command. Supreme Commander Thrix seemed almost humble. Your strategy was unorthodox, he admitted, but effective beyond our expectations. The Confederate military formally requests that Earth provide more veterans to train our forces. Susan looked around the room at the alien commanders. Only months ago they had laughed at human warfare. We will provide whatever assistance you need, she said. But understand this. Winning this war will require more than just adopting our weapons and tactics. You must change how you think about warfare itself. Explain, Thrix requested. The Confederacy sees war as a science, precise, predictable, ruled by technology. Humans see it as both a science and an art. We understand that chaos, deception, and psychological factors are just as important as firepower. The alien commanders considered her words. To defeat the harvesters, Susan continued, we must combine your advanced technology with our experience and adaptability. Neither alone will be enough. After the meeting, Susan stood at a viewport looking out at the stars. Admiral Zexthal joined her. When we first met, he said, I thought humans were primitive. I was wrong. Susan smiled slightly. A common mistake. People often confuse technology with effectiveness. The harvesters are gathering their forces for a major assault, Zexthal said. Our intelligence suggests they will attack multiple systems simultaneously. Then we'll be ready, Susan replied. And this time, we'll fight as true allies. Across Confederate space, human veterans were teaching alien soldiers how to think differently about combat. On Earth, factories worked day and night to produce specialized weapons. The galaxy had stopped laughing at human warfare. Now they were depending on it. And somewhere beyond the galactic rim, the harvesters were learning a painful lesson. Humans might lack advanced technology, but they understood war in ways the galaxy had forgotten long ago. The galaxy laughed at human warfare until Earth's veterans entered the battle part. 6 months after the Battle of Kaldor Prime, the war had reached a stalemate. The harvesters had stopped their advance but remained a deadly threat. The time had come for a final solution. On the Confederate capital world of Xyloria, a special meeting took place. The Galactic Council chamber was filled with representatives from every Confederate species. For the first time, humans sat at the high table, no longer treated as primitives. Ambassador Laura Mitchell, who had once been mocked during her first contact with the Confederacy, now addressed the Council as an equal. The defensive war cannot continue forever, she said. The harvesters adapt to each new tactic we develop. We must take the fight to them. Supreme Commander Thrix nodded his insectoid head in agreement. We have located the harvester homeworld, beyond the galactic rim, but our scouts report its defenses are formidable. General Alan Foster stepped forward. He wore a new uniform that combined Confederate and Earth military styles. The Confederacy has never faced an enemy like this before, he said. But humans have fought ourselves in countless wars. We've learned that sometimes victory requires bold action. He activated a holographic display showing the harvester homeworld. It was a massive planet surrounded by bioships and defensive structures. A direct assault would be suicide, Admiral Zexathal said. Agreed, Foster replied. That's why we won't launch one. He explained the plan. It was unlike anything the Confederacy had ever attempted. Not a massive fleet battle, but a precision strike targeting the harvester leadership. Intelligence suggests the harvesters operate as a hive mind controlled by a single queen, Foster said. We believe she coordinates all harvester activities from their central hive on the homeworld. Laura watched the alien representatives react with shock as Foster outlined the mission. A small team would infiltrate the planet, while the main fleet created a diversion. This plan, Supreme Commander Thrix's voice trailed off. It risks many lives for an uncertain outcome. All war is risk, Foster replied simply. But sometimes a small team can accomplish what an entire fleet cannot. The council debated for hours. Finally, they voted. The plan was approved. Colonel Ryan Martinez prepared his team aboard the stealth ship Shadow Dancer. At 45, Ryan had served in every branch of Earth's military. He specialized in covert operations behind enemy lines. His team consisted of 12 humans, all veterans, of Earth's most elite special forces units. They had spent weeks training together, learning to move and think as one. Final gear check, Ryan ordered. The team inspected their equipment. They carried no energy weapons, which would be easily detected. Instead, they had combat knives with molecular edges that could cut through almost any material. They had specialized projectile weapons with sound suppressors. Their armor was lightweight but reinforced with alien materials. Dr. Eric Washington had designed special devices for the mission. These will disrupt the harvester communication frequencies, he explained, showing Ryan a small black box. It should hide your presence from the hive mind temporarily. The main Confederate fleet, led by Admiral Susan Hayes, would attack the outer defenses of the harvester system. While the enemy was distracted, the Shadow Dancer would slip through to the planet's surface. As they prepared to depart, Supreme Commander Thrix visited the ship. He looked at the human team with new respect. Your species once seemed primitive to us, he admitted. We believed warfare was about technology and numbers. You have taught us it is also about courage and innovation. Ryan nodded. Different roads, to the same destination. The mission began 3 days later. The Confederate fleet launched its attack on the Harvester system. Hundreds of ships engaged the outer defenses, drawing the enemy's attention. The Shadow Dancer, using stealth technology combined with human deception tactics, slipped through the chaos. The small ship landed in a remote area of the Harvester, homeworld, its presence masked by the battle raging in orbit. Ryan led his team across the alien landscape. The planet was a disturbing combination of technology and biology. Buildings seemed to grow from the ground like twisted trees. The surface pulsed with strange energy. They moved silently, using every skill learned in Earth's conflicts. When Harvester patrols approached, they didn't fight unless necessary. They hid, using patience and stealth, tactics the Harvesters had never encountered. 5 kilometers to the central hive, whispered Lisa Daniels, Ryan's second in command. She had fought in the jungle campaigns on Earth, where moving unseen was the difference between life and death. As they got closer to the central hive, the team activated Dr. Washington's devices. The small black boxes emitted frequencies that confused the Harvester communication network. They entered the central hive through a waste disposal channel. The inside was even more alien. Tunnels of organic material that seemed alive, pulsing with energy. The air was thick and humid. According to the scans, the Queen should be in the central chamber, Ryan said quietly. The team moved deeper into the hive. Twice they encountered Harvester guards, strange creatures that were part organic, part machine. They silenced them, quickly with their knives before they could alert others. Finally, they reached a massive door blocking their path. Shaped charges, Ryan ordered. Minimal explosion. They placed the charges carefully. The explosion was no louder than a cough, but it created an opening large enough to slip through. Beyond the door was a vast chamber. In its center sat an enormous creature, 3 times the size of a human with multiple limbs and a pulsing brain visible through a transparent membrane. Around her, hundreds of smaller harvesters worked at biological control panels. That's her, Ryan whispered. The Queen. For a moment, the team stood frozen, taking in the sight. Then the Queen turned her massive head toward them. She had sensed them despite the disruption devices. A strange voice filled their minds. Humans, the primitive species. Ryan didn't hesitate. He signaled his team to spread out as the Harvester guards moved to attack. What followed was combat unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Not the ordered formations of Confederate warfare, nor the overwhelming force of Harvester attacks. It was human combat, desperate, adaptable, and utterly determined. The team used everything at their disposal. They turned the environment against their enemies, creating distractions and choke points. They used hand signals to coordinate without speaking. Ryan fought his way toward the Queen. When his weapon ran out of ammunition, he used his knife. When a Harvester guard knocked the knife from his hand, he used his fists. He reached the Queen as Lisa and the others held off the guards. The massive creature tried to invade his mind, but Ryan had been trained to resist such attacks. The galaxy doesn't belong to you, he said, as he placed the last of their explosives on the Queen's life support systems. The team retreated the way they had come, fighting every step. 3 of them fell, but the rest made it back to the Shadow Dancer. As they lifted off, Ryan activated the detonator. The explosion wasn't large, but it didn't need to be. It severed the Queen's connection to the hive mind. Throughout the system, Harvester ships suddenly lost coordination. Some shut down completely. Others began attacking each other in confusion. Admiral Hayes watched from her command ship as the enemy fleet fell into chaos. All ships, press the attack, she ordered. The HFY War didn't end that day, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Without their Queen, the Harvesters could not coordinate their forces. System by system, they were pushed back beyond the galactic rim. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the mission, a ceremony was held on Earth. The Confederate leadership stood alongside human officials as a monument was unveiled. A simple stone obelisk with the names of all who had fought in the war, human and alien alike. Supreme Commander Thrix addressed the crowd. When we first met humans, we laughed at their primitive weapons and tactics. We believed warfare was about technology. We were wrong. The humans taught us that true warfare is about adaptability, courage, and the will to survive against all odds. Ambassador Laura Mitchell stepped forward. Together, we have achieved something neither of us could have done alone. The Confederacy provided the technology, and Earth provided the experience and innovation. From this day forward, we stand as true equals in the galactic community. The galaxy had stopped laughing at human warfare. Instead, they now studied it in their military academies and honored it in their histories. And when new threats appeared, at the edges of known space, it was to Earth veterans that the galaxy turned first.